The ferry terminal fell unnaturally quiet as Rex, the Belgian Malinois, stopped short and exploded into sound. It wasn't the sharp, clipped bark of routine alert. It was raw, ragged, like something torn loose from deep inside his chest. Travelers froze mid-step. Coffee cups hovered in the air. The low horn from the harbor died away, swallowed by fog and confusion. Across the tiled floor, an elderly woman sat in a wheelchair near the boarding gate, her small frame wrapped in a worn gray coat. She clutched a faded canvas bag to her chest, as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. Her eyes widened, glassy with fear. "Please, please make him stop," she pleaded, her voice thin and trembling. Jack Miller tightened the leash, muscles coiling by instinct. "Easy, Rex. Easy, buddy," he said. Steady, but urgent. Rex didn't listen. The dog leaned forward, paws scraping against the damp tile, barking again, louder this time, not advancing, not retreating, warning, desperation. Heads turned. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd like a cold draft. Someone muttered a curse. Another voice rose, sharp with irritation. "Hey, get control of your dog!" Jack felt the familiar heat rise in his chest. The old tension, the one that never fully left after the Navy. He planted his boots, broad shoulders squared beneath the harbor police jacket. The seal patch on his sleeve caught the fluorescent light. Faded, but unmistakable. "Sir," a man snapped from behind him. "It's just an old lady." Jack didn't answer. His eyes weren't on the crowd. They were locked on Rex. The dog's ears were pinned forward, amber eyes fixed on the woman. There was no aggression there. No snarl. No bared teeth. Just urgency. Like he was trying to say something and running out of time. Rex had never done this. Not once in 4 years of working the docks. Not during bomb drills. Not during drug sweeps. Not even during storms when the ferries rolled hard and tempers ran hot. Jack's grip tightened, heart thudding harder than he liked to admit. The woman's hands shook. The canvas bag rustled softly against her coat. "I didn't do anything," she whispered, almost to herself. "I'm just waiting for the ferry." Fog pressed against the tall windows, turning the morning light dull and gray. Outside, gulls cried somewhere over the water, unseen. Inside, the terminal felt smaller, tighter, like the air itself had drawn in a breath. A younger officer stepped closer, Tom Reyes, time 20 splows, fresh uniform, cautious eyes. He lowered his voice. "Jack, you're scaring people." Jack swallowed. He knew the look. He'd seen it overseas, in briefings and boardrooms after the war. The look that said, "You're the problem now." Rex barked again, shorter, louder. Jack felt it in his bones. "Rex doesn't bark like this," he said quietly. Tom frowned. "Dogs get spooked. Loud noises. Wheelchairs. You know that." Jack shook his head. Barely perceptible. Not him. The woman whimpered as Rex strained once more against the leash. Tears slid down the deep lines of her face. "Please," she said, voice breaking. "I can't handle this." Jack crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to Rex's eyeline. "Talk to me," he murmured. "What is it, boy?" Rex didn't look at him, wouldn't look away. Around them the crowd shifted, uneasy. Phones came out. Someone mentioned calling a lawyer. Another complained about missing work. Words like liability and security drifted through the fog of noise. Familiar. Hollow words Jack had heard too many times since leaving active duty, right alongside conversations about health insurance, retirement plans, and Medicare paperwork. That always seemed to reduce people to numbers. This woman wasn't a number. She was shaking, afraid, invisible. Jack straightened slowly, decision settling in his chest like a weight he recognized all too well. He'd trusted his own judgment once over Rex's warning, years ago. Someone had died because of it. He wasn't making that mistake again. "Ma'am," Jack said, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the murmurs. "My name's Jack Miller, Harbor Police. I need you to come with me for a quick check." Her eyes darted around, panic flaring. I can't. I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Jack said, "but my dog is telling me something's not right." The crowd erupted at once. "You can't do that! This is ridiculous! Leave her alone!" Rex barked again. One sharp, final warning that echoed off the glass and steel. Jack tightened the leash and stepped toward the wheelchair, heart pounding, fully aware that whatever came next would change the rest of the day. And maybe a life. And maybe a life. The words hung unspoken as Jack guided the wheelchair away from the boarding gate. The crowd followed for a few tense steps, voices overlapping, anger, confusion, the low hum of judgment, until Tom Reyes lifted his hands and told them to give space. The fog pressed harder against the glass, blurring the harbor into a pale smear of gray. Jack felt every eye on his back. He'd felt it before, under different skies, different stakes. Back then, it was desert heat instead of sea cold, rifles instead of smartphones, men instead of commuters. But the weight was the same, the quiet accusation that he didn't belong among ordinary people anymore. The elderly woman's wheels clicked softly over the tile. She kept her head down, fingers locked around the canvas bag. Rex walked tight at Jack's side now, no longer barking. Every muscle wound tight as wire. His silence was louder than the noise behind them. Jack didn't look back. He never had been good at explaining himself in moments like this. Words came slower after the war. Too many things lived behind them. "Sir," Tom said, catching up beside him, voice low. "You sure about this?" Jack stopped just short of the security corridor. He looked at Tom then, not sharply, not angrily, just long enough to make the younger man uneasy. "I've been wrong before," Jack said, "and I've paid for it." Tom hesitated. "That was overseas." Jack nodded once. doesn't make it different. The woman finally spoke again. I don't understand, she whispered. I'm not dangerous. Jack softened his tone. I know, ma'am, and Rex knows it too. She glanced down at the dog, startled. Rex met her gaze for a brief second. Tail low, eyes steady. There was no threat there, just something like recognition. Jack felt the old ache settle in his chest, the one that always came when people assumed calm places were safe and loud warnings were mistakes. He'd learned otherwise, the hard way. The Navy had taught him how to move, how to clear rooms, how to survive. It hadn't taught him how to live afterward. Civilian life came with quiet sounds that felt too loud, and silences that felt dangerous. Ferry terminals, grocery stores, small talk about the weather, social security checks, prescription refills. Rex had been the bridge between worlds. 4 years earlier, in a dust-choked village halfway across the globe, Rex had barked just like this. Jack had ignored him then, trusted the map, the intel, the schedule. 30 seconds later, the road had erupted. One man didn't walk away. Jack carried that lesson like a scar you couldn't see. Behind them, someone shouted, "You're profiling her!" Jack flinched, not outwardly, but inside. He hated that word, hated what it implied. He slowed, turned just enough to address the voices, without feeding them. This isn't about who she is, he said evenly. It's about what my dog is telling me. That's not a reason. Jack met their eyes. It is for me. The wheelchair rolled to a stop near the small examination room. The door stood open. Fluorescent lights hummed softly inside. The space smelled faintly of antiseptic and old paint. Am I in trouble? Jack knelt slightly, closer to her eye level. No, ma'am. You're not under arrest. I just need to make sure you're okay. Her eyes brimmed. No one ever asks that. The words landed heavier than she knew. Jack straightened, heart tightening. This was the part no training manual covered. The part where people slipped through cracks. Because they were quiet. Because they were old. Because they didn't take up space. Rex stepped forward, sniffed once, then sat beside the wheelchair, body angled toward her. Protective. The tension in his shoulders didn't ease, but his presence shifted. Tom watched, unsettled. That's not normal. Jack nodded. Nothing about this is. He reached for the door handle, already aware that crossing this threshold would set things in motion he couldn't easily stop. Careers could bend, complaints could follow, headlines could twist the truth. But Jack had lived with worse than bad press. He opened the door. Let's take a look, he said quietly. Together. And as they stepped inside, Jack knew, deep down, that whatever Rex had sensed wasn't about danger to others. It was about danger to her. It's always cold in places like this, the woman murmured, as the door closed behind them. The examination room was small and plain, White walls, a narrow bench, a cabinet stocked with basic medical supplies. The hum of the overhead light filled the silence, steady and unforgiving. Jack noticed how she drew her coat tighter around herself, as if the chill came from somewhere deeper than the air. "My name's Eleanor Brooks," she said softly, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry for the trouble." "You didn't cause any trouble," Jack replied. "We just want to make sure you're all right." Eleanor nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. Rex sat beside her wheelchair, close enough that his shoulder brushed the wheel. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. His breathing was slow, but deliberate. Every rise and fall measured, as if he were counting something only he could sense. Jack had seen that posture before. "Where are you headed this morning?" he asked. "Whidbey Island," Eleanor answered. "There's a church service. Someone said it would be good for me to get out." She hesitated. "I don't get out much." Tom leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching Rex more than the woman. "Time 250s. You live around here?" Eleanor shook her head. "A nursing home in Sequim, 30 miles inland." A faint smile crossed her lips, then vanished. "They put me on the shuttle. I didn't want to be late." Jack felt something twist in his chest. No family rushing beside her. No one arguing on her behalf outside. Just an old woman, a wheelchair, and a ferry ticket folded neatly in her coat pocket. Invisible. Rex shifted suddenly, nose lifting, ears twitching. He let out a low sound. Not a bark, not a growl, a warning, under his breath. Jack straightened. "What is it?" Tom frowned. "He's been quiet for 2 minutes. That's a good sign, right?" Jack didn't answer. His eyes were on Eleanor's hands. They were shaking. Not from fear alone. Jack recognized it now. The subtle tremor, uneven, like a motor misfiring. He'd seen it in men after long patrols, in veterans filling out disability forms, in hospital waiting rooms, where hope thinned with every passing hour. "You feeling all right, ma'am?" Jack asked. Eleanor swallowed. "Just tired." She clutched the canvas bag tighter. "It's been a long week." "What's in the bag?" Tom asked gently. Eleanor flinched at the question. "My things," she said quickly. "Just personal items. Medicine. Letters." Her voice wavered. "Please don't take it." Jack raised a hand to Tom, stopping him. He crouched again, meeting her eyes. "No one's taking anything without your permission." Her shoulders sagged, relief mixing with exhaustion. "Thank you." Rex leaned forward, sniffed the air once, then pressed his body closer to the wheelchair. His tail remained still. His eyes never left Eleanor's midsection. Jack felt the room tighten around them. "You said someone suggested the church service," Jack said. "Who?" Eleanor hesitated. "A man." She paused, searching for words. "He visits the nursing home sometimes. Talks about helping veterans." helping families. She smiled faintly. He was very kind. Tom exchanged a glance with Jack. Did he give you anything? Eleanor shook her head. No, just asked me to carry the bag. Said it was safer with someone like me. Her brow furrowed. Someone people wouldn't notice. The words landed hard. Jack felt the fog outside creep inward, cold and heavy. He stood slowly, every instinct he'd honed screaming that they were standing at the edge of something dangerous, not explosive, not obvious, but quietly lethal. Rex let out another low sound, sharper this time. His head turned slightly, as if tracking something unseen beneath skin and bone. Jack took a breath. Eleanor, I'm going to call our medical officer, just to be safe. Her eyes widened. Am I sick? I don't know yet, Jack said honestly. But I don't like guessing when lives are involved. Tom shifted his weight. Jack, this is getting serious. Jack met his gaze. It already is. He reached for the radio clipped to his shoulder. Dr. Cole, this is Miller at the terminal. I need you in exam room 1. Now. Static crackled. Then a calm voice answered. On my way. Eleanor looked down at Rex, her voice barely audible. Why is he staying so close? Jack watched the dog carefully before answering. Because, he said quietly, he thinks you need protecting. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She didn't bother wiping away. Outside, the ferry horn sounded again, long and low. Announcing a departure, Eleanor would not be boarding, and for the first time, Jack understood that Rex hadn't shattered the morning to accuse an old woman. He'd done it to make sure she wasn't forgotten. Dr. Hannah Cole arrived 5 minutes later. Her footsteps brisk, her expression already focused. She was in her early 40s, hair pulled back tight, eyes sharp, the kind that came from years of making decisions that couldn't wait. The medical bag slung over her shoulder bumped lightly against her hip as she stepped into the small exam room. What have we got? She asked, already snapping on gloves. Jack didn't answer right away. He watched Rex. The dog had shifted position again, now sitting squarely between Eleanor and the door. Body angled outward, head low, eyes alert. He wasn't guarding the room, he was guarding her. Jack gestured toward the wheelchair. Elderly female, shaking, shortness of breath. My dog reacted hard out there and hasn't stood down. Hannah glanced at Rex, then back at Jack. She didn't smirk. She didn't roll her eyes. She'd worked the docks long enough to know Jack Miller didn't cry wolf. All right, she said. Ma'am, I'm just going to check a few things. Blood pressure, pulse, oxygen. Eleanor nodded, lips pressed tight. I don't want to cause trouble. You're not, Hannah said gently. You're taking care of yourself. The cuff tightened around Eleanor's arm. The monitor beeped once, then again, slower than Jack liked. Hannah's brow creased slightly. Her voice stayed calm. Any pain? Eleanor hesitated. Not pain exactly, just pressure. like something's sitting wrong. Rex let out a low sound, barely audible, but Hannah heard it. She glanced down. He's very focused. Jack nodded. He doesn't do that unless something's off. Tom shifted near the door. We ran the bag earlier. Nothing. No metal, no explosives, no electronics. Hannah nodded without looking up. That's good. But Rex didn't relax. Hannah checked Eleanor's pulse again. Then her eyes flicked to the oxygen reading. Her fingers paused. That's odd, she murmured. Jack felt his stomach tighten. What? Vitals are borderline, Hannah said carefully. Not emergency level yet, but not normal either. Tom exhaled. So, nerves? Hannah shook her head slightly. Nerves don't do this. She tapped the screen once, as if hoping it would change its mind. Let me ask you something, Eleanor. Have you felt dizzy today? Eleanor nodded slowly. This morning, when I stood up. Nauseous? Yes. Any new medications? Eleanor glanced down at her bag. Just what they gave me. Said it would help. Jack caught that. Who's they? She swallowed. The charity man. The one I told you about. He said it was covered. That I wouldn't have to worry about insurance. Or Medicare. Or any of that. The word insurance hung heavy in the room. Hannah straightened slightly. Did you take anything this morning? Eleanor shook her head. No. He told me not to until I arrived. Rex stood abruptly, nails clicking on the floor. He stepped closer to Eleanor and froze. Nose lifting, nostrils flaring. Jack felt it then. Clear. Cold. This isn't about the bag, Jack said. Hannah looked at him. What do you mean? Jack watched Rex's eyes track. Not Eleanor's hands. Not her face, but her torso. He's not alerting to something she's carrying, Jack said. He's alerting to her. Tom frowned. That's not possible. Hannah didn't respond. She moved closer, listened to Eleanor's breathing, then pressed 2 fingers gently against her abdomen. Eleanor gasped. Right there. That's where it feels wrong. Hannah withdrew her hand slowly. Eleanor, she said, voice calm, but firmer now. I need to be very clear. Have you ever agreed to carry anything for someone inside your body? Eleanor's eyes widened. What? No, I would never. Her words broke off. Another wave of dizziness hit. She swayed in the chair. Rex barked once, short, sharp, urgent. Jack moved instantly, steadying the wheelchair. We need to escalate. Now. Tom hesitated. Jack, the scans came back clean. We're talking about detaining an elderly woman with no proof. Jack turned to him, eyes hard. The proof is standing right there on 4 legs. Hannah met Jack's gaze. She saw it now. The pattern that didn't fit. The numbers that didn't lie cleanly. I want her transferred, Hannah said. Hospital. Full imaging. Eleanor looked between them. fear flooding her face. "Am I going to be arrested?" Jack shook his head immediately. "No, ma'am. You're going to be helped." Outside the room, voices were rising again. The ferry horn sounded, louder this time, announcing final boarding. Eleanor's ferry was leaving without her. Rex didn't look toward the sound. He stayed focused on the woman everyone else had already dismissed. Jack keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Miller. I need an ambulance to the terminal. Priority." Static crackled, then confirmation. Jack took a breath, heart pounding. Technology had said no. Procedures had said stand down. The crowd had said let it go. But Rex had said now. And Jack had learned the cost of ignoring that voice. If you were in Jack's position, what would you trust more? Technology, your own judgment, or a dog's instinct? The ambulance siren cut through the fog like a blade, growing louder as it approached the terminal. Jack stood just outside the exam room, one hand resting lightly on Rex's collar, feeling the steady vibration of the dog's breath through his fingers. Rex hadn't moved since Hannah made the call. He hadn't whined. He hadn't paced. He simply stayed. Eyes fixed, body coiled, as if time itself were something he was holding back. Jack knew that posture. It pulled him years backward, to a stretch of road in Helmand Province where the air shimmered with heat and dust. Rex had frozen like this once before. Same stillness, same focus. Jack had glanced at the map, the clock, the convoy schedule. Everything had looked clean. The tech had said clear. The road had said safe. Jack had waved the team forward anyway. 30 seconds later, the ground had erupted. Metal. Fire. Silence. That rang louder than any explosion. One man hadn't made it back. A medic Jack still saw in his sleep, face pale, under a foreign sky. Rex had barked then too. Jack exhaled slowly, forcing himself back into the present as the stretcher rolled through the door. 2 paramedics moved with practiced urgency, voices low, efficient. Eleanor's breathing had turned shallow. Time 200 mounds. Her hands trembled uncontrollably now. The canvas bag slid from her lap to the floor. A dull thud. Unnoticed. "Ma'am, we're going to take good care of you," one paramedic said, adjusting the oxygen mask. Eleanor's eyes flicked toward Jack. "I didn't mean to do anything wrong," she whispered. "I swear." Jack stepped closer, lowered his voice. "I believe you." Her eyes filled, not with relief, but something heavier. Gratitude, mixed with shame. No one ever does. Rex shifted as they lifted Eleanor onto the stretcher. He placed himself between her and the open doorway, until Jack gave a quiet nod. Only then did he step aside. Tail still, ears forward. Hannah met Jack's gaze. "I'm calling this in as a medical emergency," she said. "Not a security incident." Jack nodded. "Thank you." She hesitated. You were right to push. Jack didn't respond. Being right had never felt like victory. As the paramedics wheeled Eleanor out, Tom Reyes hovered near the wall, unease etched across his face. Jack, if this goes sideways, it already has, Jack said quietly. They moved through the terminal. Commuters parted without being told. Phones lowered. Conversations died. The earlier outrage had cooled into something else. Uncertainty. Maybe even guilt. Jack caught fragments of whispers. Healthcare. Elder abuse. Scams targeting seniors. Familiar headlines. Expensive words that never quite fixed the damage. Outside, the fog wrapped around the ambulance like a shroud. Rex jumped in without being told, landing lightly beside the stretcher. Jack climbed in after him. The doors slammed shut. Final. Inside the ambulance, the air smelled of antiseptic and damp wool. The monitor beeped steadily, though the rhythm was uneven. Eleanor's eyes fluttered beneath the mask. "Stay with us, Eleanor," the paramedic said. "You're doing fine." Jack took her hand. It felt fragile, colder than it should have. "You're not alone," he said. "We've got you." Rex lowered himself beside the stretcher, rested his chin on Jack's knee. His eyes never left Eleanor's face. The ambulance lurched forward. As the terminal faded behind them, Jack stared through the small rear window. The water lay gray, restless. He felt the old weight settle fully now, the responsibility he'd tried to outrun since leaving the service. The knowledge that ignoring a warning didn't just end missions, it ended people. He looked down at Rex. "You tried to tell me once," Jack murmured. "I hear you now." Rex didn't move. He didn't need to. The monitor gave a sharp, irregular beep. The paramedic's tone changed. "Her vitals are dropping." Jack's grip tightened around Eleanor's hand as the ambulance surged through the fog, racing toward answers that were coming far too late for comfort. And Jack knew, with a clarity that chilled him, that whatever they found at the hospital would trace back to that warning bark and the past he'd never truly left behind. The ambulance doors burst open at Jefferson County Hospital, spilling cold air and urgency into the emergency bay. Nurses moved fast, voices sharp, practiced. Eleanor's stretcher rolled forward, wheels rattling over concrete, as a trauma nurse called out vitals. The smell of disinfectant and rubber gloves hit Jack like a pall. Rex jumped down before Jack could reach for the leash. He stayed tight at Eleanor's side, until a nurse raised a hand. "The dog can't come past this point." Jack hesitated. Then he met Rex's eyes. The dog stopped, sat, and waited. Not obedient, trusting. "I'll be right here," Jack murmured. Rex's ears twitched once. He stayed. Eleanor turned her head weakly. Her eyes searched. "Don't let them take my bag," she whispered. "It's all I have." Jack picked it up, surprised by the weight. Lighter than it should be. "I'll keep it safe," he said. The doors swung shut. Silence followed. Thick, clinical, unforgiving. Jack paced the corridor, bag in hand, watching the red light above the trauma room. A television murmured nearby. Morning news. Ads about retirement planning, Medicare Advantage plans, prescription savings. The words felt cruelly out of place. Tom Reyes arrived minutes later, breathless. "You made the call," he said, trying to sound neutral. "Admin's asking questions." Jack didn't look at him. They always do. Tom glanced at the bag. "Still think it's not about that?" Jack set the bag on a bench, opened it carefully. Inside were folded letters, a plastic pill organizer, a church pamphlet, a photograph. Creased at the edges, a young man in uniform, smiling. Eleanor's son, maybe. The bag smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. "Nothing dangerous here," Tom said. Relief creeping in. Jack closed the bag. "Exactly." A nurse stepped out, eyes serious. "Officer Miller?" Jack straightened. "Yes." "We're seeing irregularities on her scan," the nurse said. "The doctor wants to speak with you." Inside the imaging room, Dr. Patel pointed to a grayscale screen. "This area shouldn't look like that," he said. "There's a foreign mass, not metal, times 150 mson, not electronics, biological packaging." Jack's jaw tightened. "Inside her." Dr. Patel nodded. "If it ruptures—" "I know," Jack said quietly. Tom swallowed. "So the dog was right," Jack finished. A beat passed, the kind that redraws lines. "We need consent for emergency intervention," Dr. Patel said. Eleanor was barely conscious when Jack leaned close. "Eleanor," he said gently, "they need to help you. It could save your life." Her eyelids fluttered. "I just did what they told me," she whispered. "They said it would help my boy." Jack felt the floor tilt. "Who said that?" "A man," she breathed. "Said he worked with veterans. Said he knew my son. Promised answers." Her grip slackened. Outside, Rex whined once, soft, anxious. Jack turned toward the sound. Through the glass, the dog stood alert, watching the hallway, as if tracking footsteps no one else could hear. Admin arrived then. 2 suits, voices low, firm. "Officer Miller, you escalated without autumn. Cause at the terminal. Complaints are already coming in." Jack faced them. "An elderly woman was used as a courier. She's in surgery because we acted." One suit hesitated. The other frowned. "We'll see." Jack didn't argue. He didn't need to. Crowds don't change their minds easily. They just move on. Hours passed. The light over the trauma room switched off. Dr. Patel emerged, removing his mask. "She made it through," he said. "Barely. Another 10 minutes." Jack closed his eyes. Rex sat at his heel, body finally easing. Tail thumped once against the floor. Not celebration. Relief. Tom exhaled. You went against everyone. Jack looked at Rex. Sometimes that's the job. He stood, knowing the consequences would come. Paperwork, meetings, scrutiny, but also knowing something else. Ignoring that bark would have been worse. Much worse. The operating room doors closed with a final hiss, and the hallway seemed to exhale all at once. Jack remained where he was, hands buried in his jacket pockets, eyes fixed on the blank wall across from him. Rex sat close, shoulder touching Jack's leg, the dog's breathing finally slowing to something almost normal. Almost. Dr. Patel returned, with Dr. Hannah Cole beside him. Both wore the kind of expressions that meant the truth wasn't finished yet, only revealed. We removed the package, Patel said quietly. Sealed polymer, biologically concealed. If it had ruptured, the toxins would have shut down her organs in minutes. Jack nodded once. What was it? Patel hesitated. Synthetic narcotics. High potency. The kind traffickers move when they think no one's looking. Hannah folded her arms, jaw tight. They're using seniors, she said. People with limited income, limited support, complicated healthcare coverage. People who won't question authority. Jack felt a slow burn rise in his chest. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Calculated. Familiar. How many? He asked. We don't know yet, Hannah replied. But Eleanor won't be the last if this keeps going. Tom Reyes leaned against the wall, shaken. She didn't even know. No, Hannah said. She believed it was medicine, or help, or hope. Jack closed his eyes. Eleanor's shaking hands, her apology for existing, the way she clutched that bag like it was proof she still mattered. The TV ads echoed in his mind. Affordable care, senior benefits, peace of mind. Words that sounded kind until someone twisted them into weapons. A uniformed detective arrived, notebook already open. Officer Miller, we're opening an investigation. Elder exploitation, smuggling, medical fraud. We'll need your statement. Jack nodded. Whatever you need. The detective glanced at Rex. The dog alerted? Jack met her eyes. The dog saved her life. The detective scribbled, paused. You're aware this will draw attention. Jack almost smiled. Good. Through the glass, Eleanor lay pale, but alive. Machines hummed softly. Her chest rose and fell, shallow, steady. Rex stood abruptly, ears pricked, tail lifting just a fraction. She's waking, Jack said. Give her a minute, Hannah replied. When they were allowed in, Jack kept his steps slow. Eleanor's eyes fluttered open. Confusion, then recognition. Oh, she whispered. You're still here. Rex stepped closer, careful, gentle. He rested his chin on the mattress edge. Eleanor's hand lifted, trembling, and settled into his fur. They said it wasn't my fault, she murmured. Jack pulled a chair close. It wasn't. Her eyes searched his. I didn't want to be a burden. Jack swallowed. You never were. Tears slid silently down Eleanor's cheeks. I thought no one would notice. Rex's tail thumped once, soft. Outside, phones rang. Paperwork piled. The investigation began to turn. Jack knew what came next. Interviews, oversight, long explanations. He'd carry that weight, because this weight was lighter than regret. Hannah caught up with him. Admin's nervous, she said. Maybe, Jack replied. Maybe not. She studied him. You'd do it again, Jack looked through the glass. At Eleanor. At Rex. In a heartbeat. Rex let out a low breath, something between a sigh and a promise. The hallway felt different now, not quieter, clearer, as if the fog of the morning was finally lifting. Jack rested a hand on Rex's collar. Good work, partner. Rex didn't react. He didn't need praise. He'd already done what mattered. And somewhere beyond the hospital walls, people were still being asked to carry things they didn't understand, still being told to trust the wrong voices. Jack knew this wasn't over, not even close. Eleanor Brooks didn't wake up screaming. She woke up quietly, the way people do when they've already spent a lifetime apologizing for taking up space. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of monitors and the pale blue light bleeding in from the hallway. Rain tapped against the window now, replacing the morning fog with a steady, mournful rhythm. Rex lay on the floor or beside the bed, head resting on his paws, eyes open, watching, waiting. Jack sat in the chair near the wall, spine straight, out of old habit. Hands folded loosely in front of him. He hadn't moved in hours. The adrenaline had burned out. What remained was heavier, something that pressed down on his chest and made it hard to breathe. Eleanor stirred. Her fingers twitched first. Then her eyes opened, unfocused, drifting, until they landed on Rex. Oh, she whispered. You stayed. Rex lifted his head, rose slowly, and stepped closer. He didn't jump, didn't rush. He placed his chin gently on the edge of the mattress, tail still, eyes soft. Jack leaned forward. You're safe. He said. The surgery worked. Eleanor swallowed. I ruined everything, didn't I? The words cut deeper than Jack expected. No, he said firmly. Someone used you. That's not the same thing. Her eyes filled anyway. They told me I was helping, that it would make things right. Her voice cracked. I just wanted to matter to someone again. Silence settled over the room, thick, uncomfortable. Jack thought of the forms on her chart. Fixed income, limited insurance coverage, long gaps between doctor visits, the quiet ways people fall through cracks, the kind of cracks no one advertises during election years or enrollment season. Rex shifted closer. His shoulder brushed the bed. Eleanor reached out, trembling fingers, and clutched his fur like an anchor. "They said it was medicine," she whispered. "Said it would help my heart, help me stay strong long enough to hear from my son." Jack's jaw tightened. "Your son?" She nodded faintly. "Daniel. He served overseas. They told me he went missing. No body, no answers. No time 300s. A tear slid down her cheek. Then that man came. Said he had connections. Said carrying the package would cover the cost of the truth. Jack closed his eyes. There it was. Hope. Twisted. Weaponized. Outside the room, Hannah Cole spoke with detectives. Voices low. Jack caught fragments. Organized operation. Elder exploitation. Medical fraud. Federal involvement. Big words. Long investigations. Too late for too many people. Eleanor's breathing grew uneven. The monitor quickened. "I didn't know," she said again. "I swear I didn't know." Jack moved closer, hand steady on the rail. "I know," he said, "and so does he." Rex's tail thumped once. The nurse entered, checked vitals, adjusted the IV. Her expression changed. Her blood pressure's dropping. Jack's heart sank. What does that mean? "It means her body's been through more than we thought," the nurse said gently. "We're doing everything we can." Eleanor's grip tightened. "Am I going to die?" Jack felt the room tilt. He'd heard that question before. Under foreign skies, from younger voices. He chose honesty. "I don't know," he said. "But you're not alone." She nodded. "That's enough," she whispered. Rex let out a low, broken sound. Half whine, half breath. Jack dropped to one knee, hand firm on Rex's neck. "Easy," he murmured, though his own voice shook. Minutes stretched. The nurse called for backup. Machines grew louder. Controlled urgency filled the room. Jack was pushed back, forced to watch. This was the bottom, not the bark, not the accusations. This, an old woman fighting for breath, because someone decided her life was cheap enough to gamble with. Rex stood rigid, eyes locked on Eleanor, every fiber straining, as if will alone could keep her here. Jack felt the old weight return, the one he'd carried since the war. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose. And if that happened, he wasn't sure how Rex would survive it. The monitor steadied. Not much, but enough. The nurse exhaled. "She's holding." Jack sagged against the wall, breath leaving him in a rush. Rex slowly sat, never looking away. The storm outside intensified. Rain streaked down the glass, like tears no one admitted to shedding. Jack realized something then, something sharp, unforgiving. Even if Eleanor lived, the truth had come too late to save her trust. Her peace, the years already stolen. Some rescues didn't end in victory. They ended in survival. And sometimes that had to be enough. The rain eased, just enough to become mist again, clinging to the hospital windows like breath on cold glass. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattled, a phone rang, and went unanswered. Life moved on at a cautious distance. Inside Eleanor's room, time felt suspended, thin, fragile, unwilling to stretch too far in either direction. Jack hadn't left his spot. The nurse had stabilized Eleanor enough to move her to intensive care. But stable was a careful word. It didn't mean safe. It meant, for now. As the ICU doors opened, Rex rose immediately, muscles tightening, ready to follow. "Only one of you," the charge nurse said. Firm, but not unkind. Her eyes flicked to Rex, then to Jack. "The dog waits." Rex looked up at Jack, ears pricked, questioning. Jack knelt, pressed his forehead briefly to the dog's. "Stay," he said quietly. "Watch." Rex sat, not happy, not relaxed, but obedient. Jack followed the bed down the corridor. The IV pole squeaked softly. The monitor's steady rhythm, timed 200 miles, was the only thing keeping dread at bay. Eleanor's eyes fluttered open as they passed under brighter light. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you I would," Jack said. Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. Then exhaustion pulled her under again. The ICU doors closed. Jack stood there longer than necessary, staring at the red lettering on the glass, as if reading it enough times might change the outcome. Behind him, Rex settled onto the cold floor, eyes never leaving the door. Detective Alvarez broke the silence. She approached with a folder under her arm, her expression stripped of ceremony. "We traced the charity Eleanor mentioned," she said. "Shell organization, fake donor lists, connections to private clinics, and unlicensed labs." Jack nodded slowly. She wasn't the only one. "No," Alvarez agreed. "She was just the one who lived long enough to be heard." Jack felt that settle deep. "You're going federal." "We already have," Alvarez said. "But it's going to take time." "Time is what they count on," Jack replied. Alvarez glanced down at Rex. "Your dog knew." Jack followed her gaze. He always does. Paperwork followed. Statements, timelines, decisions dissected under fluorescent lights. Jack answered everything, without defensiveness. He didn't need to justify trusting Rex. He'd stopped needing permission years ago. What surprised him was how little pushback there was. Maybe it was Eleanor's condition. Maybe it was the growing evidence. Or maybe people were finally tired of pretending the vulnerable didn't matter until headlines forced their hand. Hours passed. When Jack finally sat beside Rex, the dog leaned into him. Quiet insistence, pressing weight against Jack's thigh. Jack rested a hand on his back, feeling the steady rise and fall. "You did good," Jack murmured. Rex didn't respond. He wasn't waiting for praise. A doctor stepped out just after midnight. "She's still with us," he said. "But the damage is extensive. The substance, it was designed to be carried without detection. Her body absorbed more than we expected." Jack nodded. "What happens now?" "Now," the doctor said carefully, "we wait." Jack exhaled. Waiting had always been the hardest part. Through the glass, Eleanor lay small against white sheets, tubes and wires mapping a quiet battle she hadn't chosen. Jack wondered how many others were still out there. Boarding buses, entering terminals, carrying packages because someone promised answers. Relief or dignity. Rex's ears lifted suddenly. Jack felt it too. Not a sound, not a signal, a shift. A nurse hurried past, then another. Voices sharpened. The ICU doors opened, then closed again. Jack stood. Rex was already on his feet. Minutes stretched thin. Then the doors opened once more. "She's awake," the nurse said, "asking for the dog." Jack let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Inside, Eleanor's eyes were clearer, her face impossibly tired. Rex approached slowly, gently, and rested his chin on the bed. "You didn't leave," Eleanor whispered. Rex's tail moved, just once. Jack watched them, chest tight, understanding something with painful clarity. Even if justice came, even if arrests were made, even if the story made the news, what Eleanor had lost could never be fully returned. But tonight, at least, she wasn't invisible. And neither was the truth. Eleanor woke to a different kind of silence. Not the fragile quiet of recovery, but the heavier stillness that settles after something irreversible has already happened. The ICU lights were dimmed now. Machines hummed in careful rhythm. Outside the window, the fog had thinned, revealing a pale stretch of water beyond the hospital grounds. Calm, indifferent, unchanged. Rex was there before she fully opened her eyes. He lay close to the bed, head lifted, ears alert, as if he'd been counting every breath she took. When her gaze finally found him, something eased in his posture. Not relief, recognition. "You're still watching," she whispered. Jack stood near the foot of the bed, arms crossed loosely, trying not to look like a man waiting for a verdict. He had learned long ago that hope was quieter than fear, and far more dangerous when misplaced. Dr. Patel entered moments later, clipboard in hand, expression composed, but honest. "Mrs. Brooks," he said gently, "you're stable, but I need to explain what we found and what it means going forward." Eleanor nodded, already bracing herself. "The substance we removed was designed to stay hidden," Patel continued. "It was slowly releasing into your system. That's why you felt weak, dizzy, why your heart struggled." Jack watched her hands tremble beneath the blanket. If Officer Miller's dog hadn't alerted when he did, Patel said, choosing his words carefully, you wouldn't have made it through the night. Eleanor closed her eyes. Too late. Not too late to live, but too late to be spared the truth. They lied to me, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes, Patel answered. They did. Silence filled the room again, thicker now. Eleanor turned her head toward the window. They told me the paperwork was taken care of, she murmured. That I didn't need to worry about health insurance, or Medicare, or costs. Her voice thinned. No one's ever said that to me before. Jack felt the words land hard. They said my son might still be alive, Eleanor continued. That they had information. I didn't even ask for proof. She swallowed. When you're old, people stop offering you hope. So when someone does, you grab it. Rex rose slowly, rested his chin on the mattress again, grounding her. Eleanor's fingers found his fur, gripping just enough to steady herself. Jack stepped forward. Eleanor, he said, what they did to you, it's being investigated. People will answer for it. She nodded faintly. That won't give me back the years I spent waiting. Jack had no reply for that. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. There's something else, he said. The exposure caused lasting damage. You'll need ongoing care, monitoring, support. Eleanor gave a small, bitter smile. Support costs money. Patel didn't deny it. We'll connect you with services, advocates. There are programs. I know, she said gently. I've filled out those forms before. Jack felt frustration tighten his chest. Systems built to help, but only if you knew how to fight them. After the doctor left, the room felt smaller. Jack leaned closer. I can help, he said. Not with everything, but with what I can. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. You already did. Her eyes moved to Rex. He did. Rex's tail thumped once. Outside the room, Detective Alvarez waited. We've identified multiple victims, she said quietly. Some alive, some not. She paused. Eleanor's statement will matter. Jack nodded. She'll give it. Inside, Eleanor watched the fog drift across the water. I don't feel angry, she said softly. Just tired and foolish. Jack shook his head. You were targeted. That's not foolishness. She met his eyes. It feels the same. Rex shifted closer, placing his body between her and the open space of the room, as if shielding her from thoughts that could still do harm. Jack understood something then, something heavy, but clear. Saving a life didn't always mean saving someone from pain. Sometimes it meant making sure the truth was finally heard, even if it came too late to be gentle. Eleanor closed her eyes, fingers still curled in Rex's fur. Thank you, she whispered, for not letting me disappear. Jack stood there, listening to the machines, to the quiet proof of survival. knowing the hardest part of the story wasn't over yet. It was only changing shape. Morning came without ceremony. Gray light slipped through the ICU window, flattening the room into quiet shapes. Rails, cords, the slow rise and fall of Eleanor's chest. Rex lifted his head as the first footsteps approached. Jack straightened from the chair, the stiffness in his shoulders reminding him he'd slept sitting up. Again. Detective Alvarez didn't waste time. She closed the door softly behind her and set a folder on the counter. "We followed the charity," she said. "What it really is, anyway." Jack nodded once. He already knew the shape of it. "It's layered," Alvarez continued. "A shell nonprofit with clean brochures and donor dinners. Beneath that, private transport, unlicensed clinics, a network that targets seniors with limited coverage. They talk about health insurance gaps," Alvarez said, "Medicare delays, financial assistance. They promise answers, relief, closure." Eleanor opened her eyes. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. "They recruit through nursing homes and community centers," Alvarez continued. "They look for people who are polite, compliant, lonely." She paused. "Level, moderate, invisible." Jack felt the word land again. "And the package?" Jack asked. "Medical-grade concealment," Alvarez replied. "Designed to evade routine scans. It's why your earlier checks came back clean." She glanced at Rex. "Technology said no. Biology didn't. Neither did your dog." Rex's ears twitched. He didn't move. Alvarez opened the folder. Photos slid into view. Men in suits, smiling. A mobile clinic van. A logo that looked reassuring at first glance. "We've identified the coordinator," Alvarez said. "Former contractor. Knows how to talk. Knows which forms scare people. Which promises work." Eleanor swallowed. "He said he could help me find my son." Alvarez softened. "He said that to others, too." Jack clenched his jaw. "How many?" Alvarez exhaled. "Enough." Silence pressed in. The machines hummed. Outside, a cart rolled past, then faded. "They'll be arrested," Alvarez said. "Charged with elder abuse, medical fraud, trafficking, federal counts." She closed the folder. "But trials take time." Eleanor nodded faintly. "Time is expensive." Jack leaned forward. "Your statement matters," he said. "Not because you were perfect. Because you were honest." She looked at him. "I don't want to be a headline." "You won't be," Alvarez said. "You'll be a witness." Eleanor considered that. "I can do that." Rex rose, placed his chin on the mattress. The contact steadied her. Jack watched them and felt a quiet certainty settle in. This was the bond no paperwork could measure. Alvarez stepped aside to take a call. Jack stayed, lowering his voice. "We'll connect you with advocates," he said. "People who know the system. Medicare counselors. Legal aid. You won't have to navigate it alone." Eleanor smiled. Small. Tired. "I've heard that before." "I know," Jack said. This time, I'll make the call. She studied him. Why? Jack glanced at Rex. Because someone once warned me and I didn't listen. I'm not doing that again. A nurse entered, adjusted a line. Vitals are holding, she said, but she'll need long-term care planning. Jack nodded. We'll handle it. When the nurse left, Eleanor whispered, I don't feel brave. You don't have to, Jack replied. You just have to tell the truth. Rex's tail moved. Once. Alvarez returned. They're moving on the first arrests tonight, she said, quietly. Jack stood. Good. As she left, Jack felt the familiar pull of duty, but changed. This wasn't a mission with an end date. It was a responsibility that followed you home. Eleanor closed her eyes. If they ask, she said, I'll tell them everything. Jack placed a steady hand on the bed rail. That's all anyone can ask. Outside the window, the fog lifted a little more. Not gone, just thinner. The curtain had been pulled back. What waited beyond it wouldn't be clean or quick, but it would be seen. And this time, someone was listening. Eleanor's recovery didn't come with celebration. It came in inches. The kind measured by a steadier heartbeat, a deeper breath. A morning when the room stopped spinning long enough for her to sit upright without fear. Outside the ICU, life resumed its muted rhythm. Coffee carts rolling past. Visitors murmuring about insurance forms and discharge plans. Nurses trading shifts with tired smiles. Inside, Eleanor learned how to be awake in a body that no longer felt like it fully belonged to her. Rex noticed the change before anyone else. On the third morning, he didn't pace. He didn't stand guard at the door. He lay down beside the bed and rested his head on his paws, eyes half closed, as if the urgency that had driven him for days was finally loosening its grip. Jack took that as a sign. You feel it too, don't you? Jack murmured, scratching behind Rex's ear. Rex exhaled, a slow, settling breath. Eleanor watched them with a faint, thoughtful smile. He knows when it's safe, she said. Jack nodded. He knows when it's not. A social worker arrived later that morning, folder thick with pamphlets, long-term care options, Medicare appeals, legal advocacy. Eleanor listened politely, nodding at the right moments, asking careful questions that revealed years of navigating systems designed to exhaust. When the woman left, Eleanor sank back into her pillows. It's a lot, she said quietly. It always is. Jack didn't rush to reassure her. He'd learned that false comfort was its own kind of cruelty. We'll take it one step at a time, he said instead. She studied his face. You don't have to stay. I know, Jack replied. I'm choosing to. That afternoon, Detective Alvarez returned, not with files, but with news. 2 arrests were made last night, she said. More warrants coming. The network's bigger than we thought. Eleanor closed her eyes. I wasn't the only one. No, Alvarez said, "but you're one of the reasons they're stopping." Eleanor absorbed that in silence. Not pride, just recognition, being useful again. Not as a tool, but as a voice. Later, when the room emptied, Eleanor reached for Rex's collar. "I used to think waking up was the hardest part of the day," she said. "Turns out, it's staying awake to the truth." Rex lifted his head and leaned into her touch, grounding her. Jack watched from the chair. Something shifted inside him. He'd spent years trying to outrun the war, shrinking his world, doing the job, going home alone. This was different. This mattered, in a way that didn't fade when the sirens stopped. A nurse peeked in. "Physical therapy wants to try standing tomorrow." Eleanor laughed softly, surprised by the sound. "One step at a time," she said again. That night, Jack stepped out to the parking lot. The rain had cleared, the pavement dark and reflective. He thought about the men who would stand before a judge, about the victims who wouldn't make the news, about how easily good intentions could be twisted when people were desperate for answers, about health care, coverage, dignity. Rex sat beside him, gaze steady. "I didn't save her alone," Jack said quietly. "You know that, right?" Rex's tail moved. Once. When Jack returned, Eleanor was awake, staring at the ceiling. "Jack," she said, voice stronger now. "If they ask me to speak publicly, I might say yes." Jack paused. "You don't owe anyone that." "I know," she said, "but someone out there needs to hear it sooner than I did." He nodded, understanding. Awakening wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause. It came with choices, made while the fear was still there. Rex lay down beside the bed again, content to rest. Not because the danger was gone, but because the direction had changed. For the first time since the ferry terminal, Jack felt something like calm. Not peace, not yet, but purpose, sharpened, clear. Eleanor closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying." Jack looked at Rex, then back at her. "We're not going anywhere." Rex slept through the morning rounds. Not the deep, restless sleep of exhaustion, but something quieter, earned. He lay stretched along the wall beneath the window. Sunlight caught the dark line of his back. His chest rose and fell in an even rhythm. Nurses stepped around him without comment. No one asked him to move. In the ICU, everyone had learned who he was. Jack noticed the difference immediately. For days, Rex had stayed coiled tight, muscles ready, senses stretched thin. Now his paws twitched only once, chasing something harmless in a dream. Jack took a seat and let the moment settle. He didn't rush it. Moments like this didn't come often. Eleanor watched from the bed. Her eyes were softer than Jack had seen them before. "He finally let go," she said. Jack nodded. "He waits until it's safe." A nurse paused at the door. Physical therapy's ready when you are, she said to Eleanor. Eleanor looked at Rex. Will he come? Jack smiled faintly. If they let him. They did. With Rex at her side and Jack steadying the other, Eleanor stood for the first time since the surgery. Her legs shook, her breath was shallow, but she didn't panic. She looked down at Rex, his shoulder pressed against her calf. Solid, calm. One step, she whispered. They took it. Applause would have felt wrong. This wasn't triumph. It was reclaiming ground, inch by inch. Eleanor eased back into the chair, breathless, but smiling. That's enough for today, the therapist said. Eleanor nodded. More than enough. When the room quieted again, Detective Alvarez stopped by. No folder this time. Just a phone she didn't check. More arrests overnight, she said. The network's unraveling. Eleanor closed her eyes. Good. They want to credit the K9 unit, Alvarez added, glancing at Rex. Jack shook his head. He doesn't need a headline. Alvarez smiled. He'll get one anyway. Rex lifted his head, then set it back down. Heroism didn't register. He hadn't chosen to be brave. He'd simply done what he was built to do. Notice what others missed, and refuse to look away. Later that afternoon, a small ceremony formed without planning. A nurse brought a scrap of bacon. A doctor scratched behind Rex's ears. Someone snapped a photo, promising not to post it. Rex accepted the bacon politely, tail still, then returned to his place beside Eleanor's bed. He knows where he's needed, Eleanor said. Jack felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Rex had offered proof. That instinct still mattered, without asking. As evening settled, Eleanor held Jack's gaze. They asked if I wanted to move, she said, to a facility with more support. Real advocates. Jack nodded. That sounds right. She hesitated. I said yes. Good, Jack said. That's a hard decision. She looked down at Rex. Harder than standing. They shared a quiet laugh. Outside the window, the light softened. Amber. Forgiving. Jack thought of the ferry terminal, the bark that cut through the morning, the crowd's anger, the tech that said no. Rex stirred, stood, and pressed his head into Jack's chest, a brief, heavy contact. You did your job, Jack murmured. That's all. Rex stepped back and sat, eyes clear. When the night nurse dimmed the lights, if anyone asks, Eleanor whispered, tell them he saved me. Jack shook his head gently. He reminded us to look. Rex lay down again, already half asleep, in a building full of alarms and policies, of charts and checklists. The quiet truth remained. Sometimes the difference between tragedy and survival is a single voice refusing to be ignored, even when it comes from a dog who never knew he was a hero. The ferry dock looked unchanged from a distance. Same wooden planks darkened by rain. Same flag snapping in the coastal wind. Same low murmur of engines rolling in from the sound. But Jack Miller felt it the moment he stepped onto the dock again. It wasn't the place that had changed. It was how people looked at it, and how they looked at him. He stood near the railing with Rex at his side, the leash loose in his hand. Morning light stretched across the water, pale gold breaking through the last thin veil of mist. A week had passed since Eleanor's collapse. A week since Rex's bark had split the calm open. People recognized them now, not with applause, not with thanks, just longer glances, softer eyes, the kind that followed someone after realizing how close they'd come to being wrong. A ferry worker approached. An older man with a weathered face and a mariner's cap pulled low. "You the officer from last week?" Jack nodded. "Yes, sir." The man hesitated, cleared his throat. "I was one of the ones who complained, said you were overreacting." He looked down at the planks. "My wife watched the news, about the arrests, about the woman." Jack waited. He'd learned not to rush people through accountability. The man met his eyes. "You did the right thing." Jack nodded once. "I'm glad she's alive." Rex's tail moved slowly, steady as the tide. The man walked off without another word. Jack didn't need apologies. He needed people to remember. The next time something felt inconvenient, uncomfortable, or slow. Tom Reyes joined him near the edge of the dock. Admin closed the review. No reprimand. No warning. Jack exhaled. Good. They're updating protocol, adding K9 behavioral overrides, giving handlers more discretion. Jack glanced at Rex. About time. Tom smiled faintly. People listen after the damage is visible. Across the dock, a woman in a wheelchair waited near the boarding ramp, different from Eleanor, younger, accompanied by a nurse. Rex noticed her, watched quietly. No tension, no warning, just awareness. Jack felt a subtle